Good morning, my friends, and welcome to Coffee with Christy. I was going to say it's the May Coffee with Christy, but someone said something to me this week. She referred to May as Mayvember because it is the never-ending month. And so that's how I'm going to begin this morning. Welcome to Mayvember's Coffee with Christy. So if this is your first time joining us, let me give you a little bit of framing. Pre-pandemic times, 100 years ago, I used to have a number of folks who would come up to me at speaking events and say, "Hey, can I buy you a cup of coffee? I'd really like to pick your brain." And it got to be a little overwhelming with so many people asking for the coffees. And as a business owner, I didn't have that much time to meet with everybody for coffee. So I used to have a monthly get together that I would rotate around the city of Pittsburgh here locally and invite the people who said, "Hey, can I buy you a cup of coffee?" and ask you some questions. And the beautiful thing about those coffee dates, if you maybe were one of the people that went through them, that I found was the benefit that folks got out of those coffee dates was less about what they learned from me and more about that they left feeling a little less alone because they realized they weren't the only ones having the challenges that they were having. And that's what we know about life, right? That what we think is individual to us is actually a part of a collective experience. And so I decided, in honor of this year is our 10th anniversary here at Edge Leadership. And in the last 10 years, 10,000 leaders globally have gone through our group coaching experiences. And so, what I'm endeavoring to do is a virtual version of the coffee date. And this way, you don't even have to buy me coffee because I'm providing my own, and you don't even need to leave the house for this. But these coffee chats were one of my favorite things about the last decade of building Edge leadership. And I hope that by offering it this way, we get to impact more people. So the coffee dates are built by you each month. We do on social media, there's a poll that comes through. People send me DMs. "Hey, can you talk about this topic? And can you talk about that topic?" And, you comment on the posts once we announce when the coffee date is, and that's how we move from there. So I'll start with some of the things that I already got, but the value of the coffee date is prioritized by the people who show up live. So please drop in, say hello to in the comments, let me know that you're here, and let me know what questions you would like me to answer today. We'll probably be 15, 20 minutes. We won't be on here long, so make sure you get those questions in sooner than later. So, the topics that came across my desk this month that folks really wanted me to chime in on were around boundaries, both setting boundaries and sustaining boundaries. Another one was managing our inner critic. For some of us, it's not just an inner critic, it's a whole negative committee living inside of our heads. And then the other one was this concept of letting go, both at work and at home. So, according to the poll and all of the votes, in my very unscientific way of collecting them all, letting go won out this month. 38% of all the vote getters, or vote givers, I guess is what it would be, said, "Let's talk about the concept of letting go." So that's where I'll begin. And I will cut that short if another question comes in along the way. How does that sound? So, letting go. What I also want to say from a framing standpoint is everything that I share doesn't come from me. It comes from the 10,000 amazing leaders that we've had the privilege of working with. So I want to be clear that I'm not making up these best practices, although I'll definitely share some stories from my own life, I'm sure. But also that these are best practices that I've seen, that I've learned, that I've watched others do. So that's how I know that they can be immediately applicable in your life, both personally and professionally, because we are whole people, my friends, and who we are is how we lead. So, with that, the first best practice that I want to share with you today around this concept of letting go is what I call checking your checklists. So, whether we know it or not, we all have an invisible checklist inside of our head for each and every role that we live in our lives, of what makes us good at that. So, for example, I have a checklist of what makes a good mom. I have a checklist of what makes a good wife, a checklist of what makes a good coach, a checklist of what makes a good CEO. And so, if we take every role of your life, if you are a Girl Scout leader, believe it or not, you have an invisible checklist of what makes a good Girl Scout leader. I have a checklist of what makes a good daughter. Hi, mom, in case you are listening in. And the challenge that we have, my friends, is when our checklist is out of line with our lives. Here's a story and what I mean by that. So, a few years ago, I was coming home from a very full day of in person sessions. And then I had an event in downtown Pittsburgh that I had to be on stage for that as well. And it was one of those days where everything just kind of ran behind. And it didn't work out the way that I thought it would work out. And so I was coming home later than usual. And I was sitting in the car on Banksville Road in traffic, and I get a text from Kevin, and it says, "What's for dinner?" And I wasn't in the best of moods. I wasn't as kind as I could have been. And my response was something along the lines of, "I don't know. What are you thinking?" And he came back, and I got the dot, dot, dot. And I'm like, "Come on, buddy, go ahead, say it." And then pause, and then dot, 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 and then it stopped. So by the time I finally got home, which was quite some time after that because the traffic was just crappy that day, like my whole day had felt. And I came up the stairs from the basement, and Kevin was in the living room eating potato chips, ruining his dinner, by the way. And I came up, and I think I said something about the potato chips. And as he would say it has since been called the Tuesday night dinner meltdown in my house. After I calmed down, I don't even remember what I said, if I'm being honest. After I calmed down, Kevin said, "Hey, let's talk about that. What did you mean by a good dinner?" And I didn't even realize that I had said something about, well, I've got to get a good dinner on the table. My day didn't go the way I thought it. And so I stopped for a moment and I thought to myself, okay, Christy, what makes a good dinner? And I didn't miss a beat. I said to him, well, a good dinner is a meat and a starch and a vegetable and a salad, ideally with homemade salad dressing and Pillsbury dough rolls. And then I stopped for a minute because what just came out of my mouth is what my mom used to do for dinners when I was growing up, complete with homemade salad dressing, by the way. And um, I giggled a little bit in that moment because I realized I had been operating underneath an invisible checklist that a good wife and a good mom had a good dinner on the table. And until Kevin challenged me on that, I didn't even realize that I was holding myself to a standard that was never even mine to begin with. Think about that. And so Kevin and Eli and I ended up having a conversation to define what a good dinner was in our family. And what came out of it was the feedback from the guys was that as long as the three of us ate together, it didn't matter what we ate. So, and it also, by the way, didn't matter if we ate at home. And it didn't matter if we ate at the dining room table, which I was always pushing us to do. And they said, it could be fun to eat and watch a movie or a show together in the living room. And Kevin said to me, "You know what, Christy, you came home and you were so frustrated and overwhelmed with all of that. But to be honest, after you told me what a good dinner is, I would have been fine with two peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, toasted, of course, because that's how he likes them." And Eli chimed in and said, "I would have been fine with macaroni and cheese from a box that I can make myself, mom." And so I share that story with you, my friends, because I feel like we can get twisted up into these invisible checklists where we end up disappointing ourselves, that we aren't living up to them. And the reality is that what makes the actually the only checklist that truly matters to me of what makes a good mom is what's on Eli's checklist. The only checklist that matters to me of what makes a good wife is Kevin's checklist. And so that's the second best practice that I would offer to you around this concept of letting go. And that is to build your checklists intentionally. So, two steps in building a successful checklist and making sure that it's yours and not living by someone else's checklist. The first is to grab a journal, grab a piece of paper, and actually grab a couple pieces of paper. And if you have your journal, at the top of each page, write down a role that you are currently playing and put the word good in front of it, right? A good husband, a good wife, a good partner, a good leader, a good teammate, a good PTA member, whatever the roles are in your life, separate page for each one. And then just do a little bit of a brain dump. What are all the things that you're holding yourself accountable to that would make a good fill in the blank? After you dump it all out, reflect on it. Give yourself a day or two, come back and reflect on it. And get curious about what are the bullet points that you put on there that maybe don't serve you, or maybe don't fit your life, or maybe you've pulled in through role models that you've had, like my I had with my mom, or the media or societal pressures or whatever it is. And then second step is to go back to some of the people that you engage with in each of those roles and ask them this question. What are, let's take it for example, as a good mom. So I would ask Eli, what are your top three favorite things to do with me? I asked Eli that question. I started asking it years ago, actually, when he was maybe 11 or 12, because I was feeling so overwhelmed with everything that was on my plate. I was growing the business and traveling like crazy all across North America. And I was feeling really guilty that I was missing a lot of his baseball games that particular year. And I had a great coach, Dr. Mary Shippey, who said to me at the time, I was talking with her about feeling guilty and feeling overwhelmed, and she said, "Well, have you asked Eli if he cares if you miss his baseball games?" And I got super defensive. And that is always a sign to me that it's time to look at my life if I'm getting super defensive, because my response to her was, "Well, of course he misses having me there. I mean, who doesn't want their mom at their baseball games?" But always wanting to be in a developmental space to get better. After I calmed down, are you seeing a pattern here? I went to Eli and I asked, um, you know, I know I haven't been to a lot of your baseball games this season, and I'm feeling bad about that. And I wanted to check in with you. And he didn't miss a beat. He said, "Well, mom, baseball's what I do with dad." I could remove that from my checklist. And then my response to him was, "All right, what are your top three favorite things to do with me?" Because that's what I want to put at the top of my what makes a good mom checklist. And so, what I will tell you is, especially with children, those three things shift throughout the course of a year. So, I invite you to ask it regularly. I do in my life, this is probably not going to surprise a lot of you, but in my life, I do midpoint, mid-year, and end-of-year check-ins with my kid as how am I doing as a mom? What am I doing that's getting in my own way, and what am I doing that's really well? And we would always, when Eli was living at home, do it at Christmas time, and then do it at our summer vacation. And when he was younger, it was things like, and I hope he doesn't mind me sharing this, but it was things like that I would read to him. He really enjoyed that. But as he got older, it shifted into other things like headed to Starbucks and getting a cup of coffee and sitting in the drive-through and talking, things like that. So those are my two best practices, my friends, in terms of how to let go at work and at home. The first is to check your checklists, and the second is to rewrite them with the help of the people who matter, both at work and at home. And that's all we have time for today. Thank you for joining and listening in. If you watch this on a recording, please drop me a note in the comments below. Let me know what resonated with you and what you would change if you could for next month once we all get through Mayvember. Have a wonderful rest of the month, my friends, and I will catch you on social media. So long now. So long. See you